We're going on assignment with the Voice of America.
How has it been like covering the event?
And I have a list right here in front of me of all the journalists who are beaten.
I make the call because I'm on the ground.
The Chechen.
Gabe Joslo, VOA News, Mogadishu.
Hey everyone, welcome to On Assignment. I'm Alex Villarreal.
And I'm Philip Alexio, sitting in for Imran today. Coming up on the program, VOA's correspondent in South Korea sharing first-hand insights from the deadly ferry sinking.
A newly discovered security bug threatens internet users. Our technology blogger tells us what's being done about it.
New York is a city of immigrants, but how do they affect the local economy?
And foreign students making the grade at the U.S. Naval Academy.
Batten down the hatches, On Assignment is about to set sail. Hundreds of people are confirmed dead after a ferry sank off South Korea's southern coast on April 16th. Most of the victims were high school students on a field trip to the island of Jeju. The tragedy has left parents of the teens devastated and outraged.
Much of the criticism has focused on the government and its initially slow response to the disaster. South Korea's prime minister has taken responsibility for the problems with the rescue operation, and he submitted his resignation. VOA's Daniel Sheriff has been covering this story from the island of Jindo, near where the ferry sank, and we talked about the overwhelming grief it has caused. We will warn you, this segment contains images you may find disturbing.
The gymnasium where many relatives stay has grown quieter as some return home with their children's remains, and outrage is replaced with sheer exhaustion. Despite the growing death toll, some parents hold out hope and are quick to challenge officials who offer none.
Did you use the word recovery? What we want is a rescue. Why do you use the word thoughtlessly? The government must rescue when the parents request rescue.
It was extremely emotional. We're talking about hundreds of parents sleeping on the floor of a gymnasium, and around them are, all kinds of journalists waiting for information, and information coming in from television news, from the officials, and it's not always accurate information. The numbers kept changing. So it was very difficult for the parents, and a horrible thing to watch as they're, seeing slowly bodies start to appear. And then as more and more came out, they just became, absolutely full of grief and just wanting to retrieve the bodies of their children.
And speaking of that grief, as a journalist, having to talk to people and try to get their stories at a time when they're going through what is likely one of the most devastating experiences of their lives, how do you get them to share with you?
To be completely honest, I never approached any of the parents to ask for interviews. I was approached by the parents on 2 different occasions who wanted to talk to me. And the reason why they told me they wanted to talk to me is because I was not South Korean media, I was not Japanese media, I was a Western foreign media, and they wanted to make sure that their concerns were being voiced and being voiced appropriately. And they didn't like the way that the Korean media especially was approaching the story and very aggressively trying to talk to them.
Right, I did notice that, Daniel, in one of your reports. One of the striking interviews that I thought you did was with a man who was showing you a photo.
이거 my Korea 아니야. No.
This is not my Korea. This is my child.
내 애기, my baby 죽였다. 여긴 대한민국 아니다.
You can broadcast them all.
My baby. 다 보내.
That man actually, it was his daughter who he had just identified her body, and he yelled at me from his car, and I had my camera and tripod, and I assumed that he was going to say something about, how the media should stop getting in their face, that he was, angry about media coverage or something like this, because he yelled very, very loudly and very much in kind of an anger sort of way. But he actually called me over to his car, and he wanted to show me, the pictures of his daughter.
Such a difficult time to be there and to be covering something like this. Now, you mentioned the length of time that it took for rescuers, searchers to access the ferry. Why did it take so long?
They had some horrible luck. It was the place where the ferry sank. There were some very strong currents. The weather was terrible at the beginning of this disaster. And, once they were actually able to get down around the ferry, then they still had to deal with wreckage. The ship was capsized, and we're talking about a 5-story ship. And inside it are, not just the bodies of these victims, but also all kinds of cargo, including vehicles. And the entire thing has been capsized and turned on its head. Also trying to get past this debris that's inside the ship to try and reach anyone who may still be alive. And now, of course, the bodies of the victims.
What kinds of changes, Daniel, might we see to South Korea's maritime industry after this disaster?
Certainly, there's going to be, and there already is, an intense investigation of the company. One of the things that most recently has come out is a transcript of the communications between the ferry and the shore authorities. And it seems pretty clear from that transcript that it was a very chaotic situation that the crew didn't seem to really know, at least the crew that was communicating with the shore didn't really seem to know exactly what was going on, didn't seem to be putting out as much information as they needed to. And certainly there's going to be a review of exactly how procedures should be carried out in disaster situations.
It's such a difficult story, this one, to watch.
Hard to imagine.
It's very difficult to imagine, and I'm sure very difficult to cover as well. So our thanks to Daniel Sheriff, VOA's correspondent based in Seoul.
Time now to take a short break, but on the other side, the ever-changing face of internet security. You're watching On Assignment. Whether you go online to check your email or use social media or even shop, you're likely to use passwords in many of the places you visit on the internet. Enter Heartbleed, a flaw in a widely used security software that allows hackers to bleed or steal passwords and other sensitive information from servers. The potentially devastating revelation rocked the online world and set off a race to patch the flaw in thousands of websites. I'm joined now by VOA technology blogger Dackle for more about Heartbleed and what it signifies, and glad you're on the show. Now, exactly, what exactly is Heartbleed and how does it actually work?
Heartbleed is a vulnerability. It's caused by a coding error in OpenSSL software, and that is a widely used security software. It is open source, which means that the code is publicly available and anybody worldwide can jump in and contribute to the production of a certain application. And this was discovered earlier this month, and researchers found that it had been sitting there. It had been there for almost 2 years without anybody knowing.
So that's kind of bizarre that something like that could be, there could be such a flaw for such a long period of time before anybody even notices it. So it allows hackers to steal passwords, and the website user, they don't even know that it has been stolen,
okay,
or that they've been invaded, or however you want to describe it.
Okay, it can steal just about anything. Mm-hmm. Hackers, what they did was hackers that found this flaw were able to send information packets to the server that are disguised. They have disguised security credentials so that the server is tricked into releasing information from its memory to the hacker. Now that might include credentials, passwords, network information, stuff that you don't really want to give out. The reason why this took everybody by surprise is that this is probably one of the few times that something like this happens very early in network communication, meaning that the system doesn't find any traces, there are no footprints, and the system doesn't have time to mount a defense.
So I guess who was affected? I mean, everybody?
Hundreds of thousands of websites were threatened. Most of them have rushed to patch the flaw, and there might be a few left that are still patching, but by and large it has been fixed. But it's important to mention here the issue with open source, because there typically is a review process to look for errors in coding, and that process apparently didn't work out very well in this case.
So it isn't something that if a private person is online and they are sending their passwords, it occurs on the server on the other end, right? So there wasn't a whole lot. There's not a whole lot that an individual person could do to protect themselves.
Not really.
And to be fixed on the other end.
Yes, some were able to change their passwords, but others, if they changed their password, then they ran the risk of having their keystrokes logged by the hacker. So it depended which sites were affected.
So you're looking at the Yahoos, the Googles, and the Facebooks, and those are the folks who had to, all these fix their end. I heard that something like Amazon, it didn't affect them, so I guess some people or some companies were not affected.
That's right. Not everybody was affected. Yes, and actually, one of the earliest victims was Canada's tax authority, and they were hit hard. They said they lost information for about 900 people. I've seen larger numbers, but that was their number. Another place was a UK website, a parenting site. Apparently more than 1 million members had their information compromised. So these were very early in the game, but now the fixes are out there.
Wow. Well, something, goes on for 2 years and nobody can find it. So, but anyway, okay. Dackle, she is the blogger she runs the Tectonics blog, actually. So glad to have you on the show.
Thanks
for
very
coming
much.
on. Want to see you again. All right.
Pleasure.
All right, we'll take a short break now, but when we come back, how New York's immigrant population affects its economy. You're watching On Assignment.
New York City, it has long been a magnet for immigrants, and the mayor's office says immigrants make up more than 40% of the city's population. If you were to put those 3 million people together, that 40%, you would actually have the third largest city in America.
Well, and many immigrants come to New York looking for a better life, but they're not the only ones benefiting. An independent study shows immigrants help the city thrive as well. VOA's Adam Phillips covers life in New York for us, and we talked about the study and its implications.
The study examined rising immigration statistics and neighborhood police reports between 1990 and 2010. New York City's economy and quality of life improved greatly during that period, especially in declining neighborhoods. The report's author, Jacob Vigdor, found a link.
The immigrants go to these neighborhoods because they're the only places they can afford, and they stabilize those neighborhoods. They reduce the vacancy rates. They reduce the state of disrepair. And these are the things that kind of lead to crime dropping.
There is a perception that immigrants can actually bring sort of a disruption to neighborhoods. And what does this study like to say about that?
There's a general perception among many people that immigrants bring disorder to a society, that somehow an immigrant group somehow makes everything topsy-turvy, and that this is actually bad for morale and bad for the economy. But in fact, a series of long-standing studies by Harvard University shows that the perception of disorder has nothing to do with the amount of immigrants or the amount of crime that immigrants bring.
Adam, there are a lot of reports about immigrants and their effects on the economy, but what is unique about this report?
This particular report really establishes that immigrants are not only good for the economy of the city, but that they actually played a major role in the turnaround that New York City had in terms of crime, neighborhood renewal, and that kind of thing. There was the report studied crime statistics precinct by precinct, in other words, neighborhood by neighborhood, and correlated it with these census statistics, and found that as immigrants moved into these derelict neighborhoods, crime actually went down rather than up, even though that's not the psychological perception sometimes.
Now, are we talking about legal immigrants or illegal immigrants that are coming in to New York, or do they make a distinguishment?
They didn't really make a distinction between the immigrants who are here with documentation and not. It's just a matter of census data. Of course, people who are undocumented here would probably be emotionally much less likely to want to speak to census takers, but I don't think that was a big part of how it came down.
What does a report like this shed on the overall life of immigration in New York City?
Well, the impact of a study like this is it gives a certain objective basis for what many of these immigration activists have been asking for, which is a culture of inclusion of immigrants, a way to integrate them economically because they make a difference not just to the immigrants who come here for a better life, but for everybody else. They do a lot of the jobs that people don't want to do. They come with a lot of can-do spirit. It's sort of a self-selecting group when you think about it. People who come here from other places already have the kind of values that many people want in an economy. They want to work hard, they want their kids to be better, they want to create a community, they want to get an education, they don't want a lot of trouble, they're not here to bother anybody. And so those kind of things tend to conduce toward a society where people want to live in, wherever they come from.
You're a New Yorker, so what have you observed from your aspect about New York and the immigration situation there? Is that just really always been a hotbed? Have you seen changes? What sort of observations can you make from your vantage point?
Well, there's more and more Latino immigrants here, especially from the Dominican Republic and Mexico. Back in the late 80s, I think that there were 46,000, I read somewhere, Mexicans living in New York. Now there are 600,000 Mexican Americans living in New York. The food's a lot better. There's a lot more of it.
That's a good
All
thing.
kinds of food. And, I love the diversity of New York. And I personally, not as a journalist, appreciate all the different languages that I hear. The other day I was in Brooklyn. I had about a 10-minute walk between my subway destination and my ultimate destination, and I heard 7 languages within 10 minutes. To me, that's all to the good.
And thanks again to Adam Phillips in New York.
Well, in addition to immigrants, the U.S. takes in a lot of international students. Even the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, which trains U.S. Navy and Marine Corps officers, has undergraduate students, or midshipmen, who are foreign.
And when they graduate, these foreign exchange students return home to serve their own countries. Ramon Taylor has the story.
Attention on deck.
Thank you, everyone. See?
David Ochi of Panama is one of about 60 foreign exchange students at the U.S. Naval Academy in historic Annapolis, Maryland.
Leaving the comfort zone of your country to come here to a culture and language completely different from your own and adapt has been a challenge.
Santiago González Ayer is an exchange student from Spain.
It opens a cultural horizon so that one understands American culture better and is more involved in the culture.
The Naval Academy was founded in 1845 on the grounds of an old fort. The Academy says its mission is to prepare students to serve as officers in the U.S. Navy or Marine Corps. It strives to develop competence, character, and compassion in its midshipmen. International Program Director Tim Disher says the U.S. Navy benefits by also opening up the program to foreign students, especially in a world increasingly connected through technology and social media.
It used to be, when I graduated in 1981 from the Naval Academy, only the senior officers were the ones that had relationships with our foreign navies or our counterparts. That's not the case anymore. I mean, we're a smaller Navy, and our students, even as midshipmen, have an ability to make an impact with our foreign partners. We are creating young ambassadors right off the bat, right after they get commissioned here.
He says the exchange also strengthens the education of U.S. midshipmen by enhancing their international exposure and understanding. Navy Lieutenant Paul Angelo graduated from the Academy in 2006.
The world is becoming smaller and smaller. One day our students will be operating in the theaters or environments that they've explored in the context of their interpersonal relationships here at the Naval Academy with the foreign cadets. And vice versa, it's important that our allies know exactly how we function and operate as a military.
After finishing the exchange program, González Ayer plans to return to Spain and become a naval officer. David Ochi wants to work as an ocean engineer back home.
I see my future in Panama.
The hope is they return home richer for the cultural experience they lived and shared with their fellow midshipmen at the Academy. Reporting from Annapolis, Maryland, I'm Ramon Taylor for VOA News.
And now from the eastern U.S. to the west, Frank Lloyd Wright is known as the father of modern American architecture. He died in 1959, leaving behind historic properties like the Taliesin West in Arizona.
The Taliesin West was Wright's winter home, and it remains a prime example of his design legacy. Shelley Schlender reports from Phoenix.
The buildings at Taliesin West resonate with the surrounding desert through rustic stones, dramatic shadows, and the contrast of water. Wright's groundbreaking design still inspires visitors.
He's uniquely American, and he wanted to break from us just copying.
So I have a niece and a nephew that are both young architects, and I mean, they're all drawn to those that came before.
The Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation reports that it costs over $1 million annually to preserve this National Historic Landmark. Taliesin West is billed as a desert masterpiece. The Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation that oversees the home also supports a school of architecture. The students use the same drafting hall where Wright himself designed New York's Guggenheim Museum. His apprentices half a century ago helped build Taliesin West. While preservation efforts are always ongoing, Director of Preservation Fred Prozillo says it's time for a major renovation.
Taliesin West being built in the 30s and 40s, out in the desert, constructed by young apprentices that were learning by doing. That was Wright's great motto, learning plumbing, learning electrical work by actually installing it. Some of these systems are now at the end of their life expectancy.
Prozillo says renovations will stay true to history, except for one of Wright's key styles.
He used this place as a laboratory, and it was ever-changing. And he asked his apprentices, well, I think we should change this. Let's take down that wall. We don't continue that tradition of change and removing things. We're now in a position where we're trying to keep Taliesin West for future generations.
Half an hour from Taliesin West is a historic resort the foundation calls one of the world's best examples of a luxury hotel strongly influenced by Frank Lloyd Wright. The Arizona Biltmore was designed by one of Wright's students. For these Biltmore blocks, Wright was an on-site consultant, and he designed the stained glass mural. Public Relations Director Sarah Moran says another reminder of Wright's influence is the Aztec Room.
You can see the beautiful Biltmore block all the way around, the gold leaf ceiling and the copper beams. We've really tried to keep this room looking like it did back then.
Moran says that any beautiful historic building becomes a time capsule, and that makes it worth preserving. For VOA News, I'm Shelley Schlender in Phoenix, Arizona.
Such incredible contributions there from Frank Lloyd Wright. Really amazing to see. Phil, have you ever been to one of his buildings?
I've been to one. There is a house he designed not far from here in Virginia. And in fact, my father built his house with a little bit of Frank Lloyd Wright character designs in it as well. So I know a little bit about it.
Amazing to see how those designs and influences linger.
Yeah, everywhere, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, next week we will be back with another show, and we'll hear from our reporter who returned to Boston for its first marathon since last year's marathon bombings.
Remember, check out On Assignment anytime online at voanews.com, Facebook, and YouTube.
As always, thanks for watching. Check us out next time.